Smoke above the Syrian capital of Damascus as the dust and despair sets in after a missile attack killed 5 people. All were military advisors.
At around 10:30, we heard the sound of 3 consecutive explosions. They targeted the building here behind us. As you know, we were shocked and shaken. Everything is broken. The fence flew from the building that was struck and came into our kitchen.
All those killed were members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard based in Syria. They blamed Israel for the attack, while they're yet to comment. Military action escalates across the region. Further efforts to stop Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, with the US today launching another airstrike. The Americans playing a delicate game of defending its allies while trying to defuse tensions.
Two-state solution.
As President Biden said the creation of an independent state for Palestinians was still possible after his first phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu in almost a month.
We're not going to agree on everything. We've said that. And good friends and allies can have those kinds of candid, forthright discussions, and we do. It's not going to change the president's view that the best long-term solution for regional security, particularly the security of the Israeli people, is a free and independent Palestinian state.
But this evening, Netanyahu once again said he would not support a 2-state solution. While on his own doorstep, pressure grows on the Israeli Prime Minister. Outside his house today, the families of more than 100 Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas protest. As Israel continues to carry out strikes in Gaza, in the last 24 hours alone, 165 people have been killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. They say almost 25,000 Palestinians have now died in Gaza since October. Violence too in the West Bank, where they're mourning a 17-year-old boy. According to witnesses, the teenager was shot dead by Israeli forces.
Come here and test and see for your own eyes what kind of life we are living here. What is the pressure they put us under? What is the women and kids, and how many fathers and mothers have to say goodbye to their children?
Nearly 4 months into this war, and the pain and isolation of conflict compounded by constant internet and phone blackouts, meaning Gazans have been cut off from the outside world and their own. Here they head to the coast in search of signal and human connection.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, whose speech at the Fabian Society conference in London, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, was interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. He said Labour was committed to the establishment of a Palestinian state, adding, "I want change through power, not protest." I started by asking him for his assessment of some of the challenges facing the world right now.
We're in one of the toughest moments in my lifetime. This is a very, very challenging time in which we're not just dealing with one superpower, the former United States. We've got China, in which we've got war in Europe. We've got rising populism in lots of democracies across the world. It's a time when Britain needs alliances, needs to believe in the multilateral system.
Your speech was disrupted today by pro-Palestinian protesters. It's a very small illustration of a much wider problem Labour have had in terms of how it's responded to this conflict, particularly the situation in Gaza. Do you think Labour have got it right?
The Labour Party is in opposition. I've been to the Middle East 4 times just in the last 6 weeks. Yes, we need a sustainable ceasefire.
But people have been dying in the rubble since October the 8th.
Absolutely, and it's unbearable, and it needs to stop now.
But within your own party, they say you have come much too late. You know, back in November, you had 50 of your own MPs, 8 shadow cabinet members, rebelling against Labour's refusal to call a ceasefire. Many within and without your party would say you're now vociferously calling for a ceasefire, but what has changed in the interim, apart from thousands and thousands more Palestinians dying?
We called for a pause, and Keir Starmer set that out very clearly. And that was because at that time, no hostages were released. We saw no way in which Hamas would lay their arms and stop firing rockets into Israel. I don't say this is easy. It's the toughest humanitarian catastrophe facing the planet at this point in time. It's heartrending. But in the end, we are in opposition. We are not the government. So I bring my voice to bear to call for that sustainable ceasefire, to keep saying that you've got to allow humanitarian aid in, that we've got to get to a two-state solution, and we hold that dear. And by the way, when Benjamin Netanyahu says no to a two-state solution, we challenge him, because the consequences of that would be one state where people are not living, able to live equally side by side, or no state at all where occupation continues. And we stand against that.
We know what he would also say to you, calling now, very vociferously, as I've said, for this immediate truce. Because what does Israel do? Which of its war objectives does it give up? Does it leave hostages behind? Does it accept that the bombing must end before eliminating Hamas?
We know that only a truce, only the weapons and bombs being put down, will allow hostages to come out safely and allow women and children to live the lives that we all want them to see.
But you want the truce first, and Israel won't do that, will they?
I am with the breadth of global opinion that wants to see the fighting end. It's unbearable, it's intolerable, it must end now.
Just finally, I mean, the situation in the Middle East and Ukraine show how heavily reliant the UK remains on its partnership with America. It's clear to see how Labour might be able to do business with President Joe Biden. But if you win the election, you may be looking at President Trump back in the White House. What would your response to that be? How will that work?
The truth of our relationship with the United States is it doesn't matter who's in the White House or number 10. It doesn't matter whether it's Nixon or whether it's Bush. In terms of our intelligence capability, in terms of our military capability, in terms of the rule-based order, we tend to see the world in the same way, and that's why there is a very clear partnership. And frankly, when we talk about the challenges of this moment, the world needs it. Of course, there are political disagreements between myself, Keir Starmer, the Labour movement, and Donald Trump. But in the end, we work because we believe in democracies, with allies. America's a major ally, and there is much common ground in the end behind the bluster and the tweets. There is common ground, and the global community needs the UK and the US to stand shoulder to shoulder, remembering that we have the privilege of being one of the 5 nations that has a seat on the Security Council of the United Nations.
David Lammy, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.